Hello, everyone. I am Chris Hyam, CEO of Indeed, and welcome to the next installment of Here to Help. This is our look at how Indeed has been navigating the global impact of COVID-19. Today is October 21st. We are on day 232 of global work from home. For those of you that have tuned in before, you know that Indeed, our mission is to help people get jobs, and this is what gets us out of bed in the morning and what keeps us up at night. And this mission takes us all over the world. We have offices in 15 countries, but we have customers in more than 60 countries. And today I am delighted to be joined by Conor McCarthy, our head of sales for Next Generation Markets, based out of Dublin, Ireland. Conor is responsible for helping people get jobs all over the world. Conor, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Chris. It's an absolute pleasure.
So let's start where we always start off with just a check-in. How are you doing today?
How am I doing today? Thank you for asking. I'm doing well. I know it's a challenging time for everyone. I've often talked about the big three pillars in our lives. Well, certainly in my life, health, relationships with family, friends, and our work, right? And of course, each of these three pillars, they're interrelated. One impacts the other. When you lose one, it can have an effect on the other two as well. So I have found during COVID in particular that it's perhaps even more challenging than ever to walk that tightrope and to balance and manage those three big pillars. You have to work a bit harder at each of those three things. That said, I know that that's a shared experience for everyone. There are so many challenges around, but there's so much also to be thankful for. And I am very grateful for everything I do have in my life right now. And so I'm feeling good. Thank you for asking.
Thanks so much for sharing that. You've been with Indeed coming up on 6 years now. And when you joined, especially in Dublin, Indeed was a very different company than it looks like today. What attracted you to Indeed? What made you want to join us?
Good question. So there were many things that attracted me to Indeed, but I think it might help if I just give a bit of context. I won't reveal how old I am, but I'll go way back to school and to college time. So when I was in school, I always had this feeling that perhaps I had an aptitude for numbers, not too much of an aptitude. Now, I wasn't a math genius or anything like that, but at the same time, I did have an aptitude. But at the same time, I also had a fondness for words and language. And I guess at a certain stage when in your schooling, you have to make some decisions about career. And I chose to do a commerce degree, which I felt was a good balance of both. I always figured that I'd probably gravitate more towards words than numbers. I think I remember having an inspirational English teacher who just gave me such an appreciation for the drama and the theatre of literature and language, and it was just such a pleasure to be in his classroom. And I remember even studying plays like Death of a Salesman and other works, which is ironic considering I ended up working a career in sales. But I just got this real love for English, for language, and I always felt that would probably be where I'd end up. I guess commerce gave me an opportunity to develop both sides. But it came to decision time then at the end of college, and I decided to go the marketing route. I felt that, that was the one that would probably appeal to me a bit more. I have parents who I love them to bits, and they've given me such a great upbringing and always emphasized education. They're both educators. My father is a scientist and a chemistry lecturer. My mother is a second level teacher. They would have always supported any choices I would have made. But I do remember my dad at one point saying, "So Conor, with this commerce degree, it probably might make sense to consider perhaps a career in accountancy, right?" I think he might have liked to have seen that security aspect to whatever career choice I made. Unfortunately for him, I didn't go down that route. I knew that numbers would never be the story of my career. I think it's a wonderful qualification and a great start in business, but I knew it wasn't going to be for me. And I guess that's why I chose marketing. And one of the things that marketing does for you, I think, is it gives you an appetite for adventure and taking risks, and that's probably been the story of my career so far. In my marketing postgrad, then I had a very interesting encounter with a visiting US professor, and he was giving us a talk about the future. And I remember putting up my hand and asking a question, saying, "So, what advice would you give to a marketing grad who is looking for the right start in their career? What kind of company should we even target? What kind of role should we target?" And he said something really interesting. He said something that made sense to me then, and still makes sense to me now, and to a large extent has actually guided my career over the last 17 years or so. And that was prior to joining Indeed. So he said there's three types of companies. You have, on the one hand, you have the elephants. These are the big multinational brands, hugely successful businesses, but also very complex businesses, probably already established in most geographies all around the world, probably have great products and or services and a great team of people working for them, but probably a large population of people working for them too. They're safe bets, right? But you can get lost, particularly as a young grad. The other side is the mice, and the mice are small startup businesses, and I've worked with a few of those. Startup businesses that may have a great product, for instance, may have a great team, may have a great idea, may have access to funding and lots of different things, but it's risky ultimately, right? And as we know, the stats tell us that 4 out of 5 businesses fail. So it's a risky one for a grad to consider joining. So I guess I then went for the middle one. So he talked about the gazelle. And the gazelle, straight away I was interested. What does he mean by a gazelle? So he referred to a gazelle as probably a mid-size company, a company with a good idea, a well-shaped and proven product and or service, a market that is looking for that product or service right at that time, and a really good team of people with a solid vision and a plan to go places quickly. And gazelles are characterized by all of the things you would expect: agility, speed, flexibility. And straight away, I was sold. I thought, yes, that's precisely the kind of organization I would like to join. So then fast forward 17 years of working with a couple of elephants and a couple of mice. All great experiences, by the way, fantastic experiences, but none that I would consider a true gazelle. And then 2015 came, and Indeed came along, and it was obvious to me right from the start that Indeed is that gazelle. It's got all of those things that I was looking for, and it also had a vision that resonated really well with me, a vision and a mission to help people get jobs. I know what it's like to not have a job. I know what it's like to feel, that you don't have a job. So you don't know when your next paycheck is going to come in. You have those feelings of fear, isolation, anxiety, just wondering when that next job is going to come along. I have been in that position, so I do know what it's like to not have a job. And consequently, I know what it means to have a job. And for us to be able to play a role in helping so many people around the world to get a job is something that just resonated immediately with me. So I feel quite privileged to be a part of that. So that's what drew me to the company. In terms of what drew me to the role or the opportunity at the time was to help Indeed to penetrate and be active in more markets than they were active in at the time. And straight away, when I looked back over the career that I had had, which was always involved in business development and sales and trying to activate new markets in Latin America, EMEA, or Europe, Middle East and Africa, and Asia, I just knew, yes, that's precisely where I know I can help. And that is something that I would love to continue doing. So straight away, I was just drawn to the impact that this role could potentially have on an organization like Indeed. So hopefully that captures it for you, Chris.
That's a great story. So it brings us up to close to the present. Let's talk for a little bit about your title is the head of next generation markets. What do we mean by the term next generation, and talk a little bit about what your team is responsible for?
Yes, very good question. When I joined, we classified these markets as emerging markets, and there were a relatively small number of markets at the time. And that was an appropriate classification for those markets because it was still very early days for Indeed in those markets. We had a lot of work to do to prove the concept would work for job seekers and for employers in those markets. But after a certain amount of time, it was a year or two ago, I sat down with the rest of the management team and with the marketing team and strategy teams, and we thought to ourselves, you know what? It no longer feels appropriate for us to refer to this collection of markets as emerging markets, right? We have a number of different markets at very different stages of development. We have one market, for instance, Italy, where we have a team of 40 people now between Dublin and Milan, where we have an office as of last October. And it's also the 9th largest economy in the world. So to refer to Italy as an emerging market was clearly inappropriate at this stage. So we felt that maybe a rebranding made sense. So that's why we came up with Next Generation. We felt that it was a very positive statement. It signaled a positive intent to really invest in these markets in the coming years. And I know that you and others believe that there is tremendous potential for us to really increase the volume of job seekers who come to Indeed, and also to radically increase the number of employers who advertise their jobs on Indeed. So I think that's pretty much where the opportunity is, right?
As you said, so you're responsible for helping Indeed grow in a number of different countries that are in different stages of development for us, which might be different than where they are in the global economy. That means that you lead a team that is incredibly diverse with a different set of experiences. So what are some of the challenges of leading a team with so many different needs and goals?
Yes, so there are obviously many challenges working with such a variety of markets. You're talking about markets that are fundamentally different from each other in so many different ways: language, culture, traditions, history, political landscape, etc. But I think one of the things that sustains me and sustains the rest of the team is the belief that actually the need that exists in these markets unifies all of them, that there is a consistent need across these markets. And that need is to match job seekers with the right job. So to match job seekers with employers is the thing that is a common need across all of these markets. And it's an area where Indeed is uniquely positioned to help those markets. But obviously there are tremendous challenges as well. I do think in order for us to be successful in these markets, we do have to understand that it's not a one-size-fits-all approach, and it's certainly not just a task or a challenge just for the sales team. In order for us to be successful in each of these markets, we've got to figure out a really true cross-functional collaboration between sales, between marketing, between client success, between the strategy teams, and all of the other functions that we work with in order to be successful in these markets. So I think it's being able to unify and energize those teams around that common goal for each of those markets is always a challenge, but at the same time, it's a great opportunity as well. And it's something that I thrive on every day.
So let's talk a little bit about this year. So going back to January of 2020, before everything that's unfolded over the last 8 months started to kick in, what were your goals? What were some of the plans that you had for your team, and how were you all looking at the year ahead?
January seems so long ago, yet at the same time, it feels like just yesterday. We felt really optimistic at the start of the year. So much had been achieved, and over the last couple of years, there had been that steady evolution. I've mentioned Italy already in terms of the progress there. And thank you and well done to Dario and Roberto and the rest of the team who've just done an amazing job building that market. We felt that we were in acceleration mode. We had the right team in place. We had the right idea in place. We felt that all of those months and years of trying to craft and shape together deals for our clients that made sense for them. It was challenging, but at the same time, we felt that those months and years of learning had just brought us to this really positive and confident state where we knew we could actually make a difference. One of the things that alerted me to the progress we had made was realizing that a lot was starting to happen in each of these markets that I may not have even been aware of, or might have found difficult to actually keep up with, which is not a challenge I certainly had at the start of my journey at Indeed. But certainly now it was quite clear that even just keeping up with the pace of change and innovation across these markets was pretty challenging. So it was all good, Chris. It was at the start of this year. It was there. The stage was set. I think one of the challenges that we have had was navigating that tension that exists every day between trying to strike the balance between trying to meet the needs of our individual markets, whilst at the same time crafting a model that actually made sense for Indeed. But I felt that we had struck that balance well, and we were ready to accelerate. And markets like Singapore, Hong Kong, Philippines, Spain, Portugal, the Nordics, Poland, we're there, we're ready, let's go. That was very much the feeling at the start of this year. Let's accelerate. And then things changed, right?
So things changed, and you and your team really were on the vanguard for Indeed. A number of the markets that you're responsible for, Singapore, Hong Kong, Italy, those were among the earliest ones to feel the impact of COVID. So what were some of the early signs for you and your team that this was going to be as big an issue as it became?
Yes. So I remember distinctly watching the footage on TV about the events in Wuhan at the time, and feeling unnerved, obviously. What was happening was clearly devastating. Yet at the same time, it to be honest, it felt quite remote. It did feel quite remote. And it felt like a big leap for it to come to all of the markets where we live and operate at the time. But that changed very quickly. It changed very quickly. And you were right. Yes, some of our markets were the first hit. Our Singapore team in particular was the first. We had a team member who had a family member who had been potentially exposed to the virus. And that triggered a sequence of events at Indeed that were very eye-opening for me. You and the rest of the leadership team made a decision to shut down our offices globally, and the reason you gave at the time was so clear because we put our employees' safety first and that of their families, and the decision was so swift, and it was so absolute. And it really gave me and so many others in the business just this incredible signal that this company really lives this this belief that employees are at the core of everything that we do, and that was really interesting, and I think that the response that we saw as a result from everyone who worked at Indeed was amazing. And the Singapore team was first. We've the team led there by Katie Birch, who does a wonderful job leading the team there, and they pivoted and they adjusted, and they did a lot of work with the Singapore government, for instance. Where one of our strategy team developed a relationship, June Lee developed a relationship with the Singapore government, and we provided resources to them in order to help with the pandemic. We put a hashtag on the site for Singapore United Jobs, which were jobs that the Singapore government wanted to advertise to help people respond to the crisis. And that was really interesting. Then we had Italy, which was the first of the European markets to get hit big. And I think that was the first time the reality kind of dawned on the rest of us in Dublin and in London and in Dusseldorf and in France that, hey, this is coming. This is real now. And again, I was really impressed with the response from the Italian team. It wasn't a reaction; it was a response. It was a very positive and determined response, and it really I think it impressed a lot of people at Indeed because they came up with that simple motto, which is to stay close to the customer. And I think it was Derek Diviney at the time talked about Google's response during the last financial crisis, which was to speed up and to slow down. That's in essence what we did as a business. And the Italian team got busy. They originated many of the ideas that we subsequently rolled out in many of the locations around the world for Indeed, around extending our featured employer promotion, just tracking the clients that were impacted directly by this, so that we could quantify what the risk and what the impact ultimately would be for the business. They also did a collaboration with the Italian government, where we became one of their digital partners to provide resources again for free to help employers respond to the crisis. And so it was first of all responding to it and doing so in a very positive and determined way. But then it was also seeing the opportunity that this could bring, and the realization that actually, indeed, our mission and our vision becomes more important now than ever, and that could be an opportunity for us to potentially accelerate in some of our markets. So I think that's the general response that we saw from the next generation market teams.
So you mentioned a couple of times, and it's obviously the sort of foundation for everything we do, our mission of helping people get jobs. And throughout the crisis, as we've talked about it, this mission, which has guided the company for the last 16 years, has felt more vital over the last 7 months than it ever has before. How did this help you and your team decide where to focus and what to do and how to respond?
We figured out pretty quickly that there's lots of things that we can do. I think you start with people, right? And I think it's that understanding that when you're faced with a crisis, the last thing you want to do is panic, that's for sure. I think you can start with empathy, and that became very clear. And understanding that our own people and teams are our clients, our partners, these are all people who are suffering as a direct result of the pandemic. So as a result, we need to be sensitive, we need to be empathetic, and we need to be considerate in our interactions with all of these stakeholders. So I think we started with the teams, and as I mentioned already, I think just that empathy that our senior leadership team showed and demonstrated very clearly towards the rest of the business was instantly clear to everyone in the business. And then we moved on to our clients and our partners, and we made a point that we were going to we were going to continue to talk to our clients and our customers, and we were going to do whatever we could in order to help them through this process. And we do have lots of resources and tools that we developed as an organization that could help employers respond in a similar way to what Indeed did to respond to the crisis. So we managed to do that in many different ways. I think what we saw grew immediately was this very tight collaboration between our sales, our marketing teams, and our client success teams, where we did lots of initiatives online and virtually, where we educated and provided support to these businesses to help them through the crisis. So some ideas there is, we did our very first virtual idea center in EMEA in the Spanish market. And that really resonated well with the client at the time. It was a very...
And for those folks who might be tuning in who are not Indeed employees, what is the Idea Center? So what is a virtual Idea Center?
Yes, very good. So it's an Idea Center is basically an experience that we provide to our clients, whereby we go much deeper with the client over the course of perhaps a half day or a day to really understand what are their needs and priorities in the whole area of hiring people, and going deeper on how their businesses are evolving and their plans for the future. And similarly, we articulate as best we can where we are going as a business and all of the various different product innovations and other areas of innovation that we're focusing on, in the hope that we can find ways of working together a bit more closely than we have been to date. So we used to do those experiences on an in-person basis at one of our many sites around the world. And I think clients always responded really well to that. Then COVID hit, and all of a sudden that experience had to change radically overnight. And I was so impressed at the speed at which our marketing team managed to essentially reimagine the entire experience and put together this virtual experience that was as impactful, if not even more impactful, for many of our clients than we had ever done before. And that's one of the examples of an innovation that's going to sustain and endure long after the pandemic leaves us. And there were other examples as well in Sweden, for instance. I remember our Swedish team. They organized what are known as fika, coffee mornings, which taps into a local Swedish tradition for coffee, essentially coffee meetings or mornings. And again, these would have been deep conversations with clients in an informal setting, but just to talk about some of the work that we're doing in this area and to find out areas in which we could potentially be of help and support to both partners as well as clients as well. So they are some examples of things that we certainly did. I know there are many other examples that I haven't mentioned, and there are many other examples of innovation as well across other territories, of course, that I haven't mentioned either. But hopefully that gives you a sense of some of the things that we did do.
Clearly, everything that's happened over the last 8 months has been an opportunity to really look at ourselves and our team and our business and our customers in a new light. What are some of the things that you have learned about your team, about Indeed, and about your own leadership through this process?
Well, first of all, quite simply, I work with a wonderful team of people. And I have also learned that I work with a wonderful company that is going places and that has a mission and a vision that I absolutely believe in. So that's the first thing I've learned. I think the second thing I've learned is that necessity is without doubt the mother of invention, and people are resilient, and people will surprise you with what they're capable of doing, and no challenge is too big. That's for sure. So one of the key challenges and learnings for me through all of this is it just reinforces something I've believed for a long time, which is that if you surround yourself with good people and and do everything you can to help and guide and support them. And most importantly, give them the freedom to truly express the full extent of their talent. Just amazing things can happen. And I've often reflected on this, is that, when you hire really smart and really bright and really capable people, they're going to bring your business and your team to places that you would not have been able to get by yourself. And that, absolutely, I'm living through that right now. And it's a joy to see, even if the consequences that I'm essentially making myself redundant. But I do think that that's important, to have the confidence to do that, knowing that there is going to be another opportunity that will lie in wait. And I think that all leaders should adopt that kind of philosophy, because I think it's only then are you going to truly get the best out of the people that you work with. I've also discovered that certain changes that we have made will endure, and will endure long past the pandemic. As I've said already, the Idea Centre is a really good example of that. Another interesting one that we've come to realize, especially over the last number of weeks, with the back to work model that we've built for the business as we move forward, which is around certain people working in office, a small percentage of people working in office, and then some people working completely remotely, and others having more of a hybrid, like flex model, whereby they're working sometime in the office and sometime away. I think that has been a really positive initiative, because one of the things we're learning is that, wow, you can be just as productive working remotely in many jobs, if not even more productive. So why don't we just make this a more enduring thing and something that lasts a bit longer? So that's really good news for us in next generation markets, because it opens up the possibilities that perhaps you could start to operate within many more markets than we are currently operating within now, because you may not necessarily have to consider office infrastructure as part of that decision-making process. I think these are the kinds of ideas now that we should be open to, because if it enables us to tap into a pool of talent that previously we would not have been able to access, well, that's got to be a good thing for the business, right? So I think other things that I think I've learned is that, I think we do. I think it's understanding that what we are doing as a business is solving some fundamental challenges for job seekers and for employers everywhere. And even though there are nuances and differences between how certain markets behave and job seekers, how they operate in job markets, job market dynamics in certain jurisdictions, again, it's that point that it's that simple need unifies all of those markets. And I think there's a real opportunity for us to be that global company we aspire to being, which is there any country where we should not operate within? I think the answer to that is no. I think that I see a very clear future for Indeed, for us to be able to operate in pretty much every location where there's a need for matching job seekers with jobs. And I would like us to do that as effectively and efficiently and as quickly as possible over the next number of years. I know there's going to be so many challenges along the way, but I think it's so clear to me that that's our destiny as a business.
That's fantastic. So I guess looking to the future, what do you think today that the future holds for Indeed and for the next generation team?
Yeah, I just to extend on some of the things I said there, I think the future is now. It's just caught up with us. The future is not just this abstract thing into the future. It is now. So many things have accelerated. We've seen our own core product development develop at an astounding rate, and it has accelerated our path towards getting closer to the hire for the businesses with which we work. I think Indeed is ready. I think, like I said, I think we can become the number one source of hire in all the markets where we operate. just to bring it back to something I talked about earlier on, I think in order for us to do that, we're already quite a big business now globally. But in order for us to continue along that path and evolution, we need to continue to be that gazelle that we were, 6 years ago when I joined. We need to be agile. We need to be nimble. We need to be quick. We should not ever lose sight of that that real sense of urgency to fix things, that sense of urgency to make things better, that sense of urgency to go out there and do everything we can to connect more with job seekers, to connect more with clients. So I think retaining those gazelle-like instincts are going to be so important to us. I think it's important for us to continue to innovate like we have been innovating in many of these markets, whilst at the same time learning from the very clear success that we have experienced in markets like the US and in the UK and many others. So again, it's back to that tension piece. It's striking that balance between innovation, but also going with a tried and tested model, and as you've talked about many times, solving some of those big fundamental challenges that job seekers and employers face. But I think ultimately we can do all of this in a much leaner way. I think we can do it in more positive ways that benefit the environment. So, for instance, doing far less travel, potentially leveraging virtual tools, not hopping in a car every day to travel to the office. There's going to be obvious benefits for that, and hopefully it'll reduce the pressure that we're seeing in rental markets and in house markets in all of the cities where we operate. So I think we can do it in a very lean, mean, and effective and efficient way. So I'm very excited about that.
So to wrap up, that is a really I think beautiful vision to think about all that new perspective that going through something like this, collectively and globally that we have has given us. If you think about the experience of the last 8 months, what are some of the things that give you optimism for the future? So the thing that makes me most optimistic about Indeed in the future, I think, is just that innovation piece and that speed at which all of the teams that operate within Indeed manage to adjust our approach and very quickly get products out there that had been in incubation mode, and all of a sudden get them out to our clients and partners to be able to use, particularly in the virtual world where we exist right now. So our ability to be able to do that and to do that well and to do that so quickly just fills me with a sense of optimism that, wow, what else are we going to do now over the next 2 to 3 years that we previously envisaged might have been 5 to 10 years? It has contracted the time horizon for lots of the decisions, I think, that we had been planning to make. And again, I'm an optimist. I firmly believe in our potential to accelerate in all of these additional markets where we have not been particularly focused on historically, but clearly are now. And I think there's a real opportunity to accelerate there. So that's the piece on the Indeed side of things that gives me a real sense of optimism for the future. I think I mentioned at the start of our conversation, Chris, about the challenges of enduring during this challenging time. But we're also seeing things that gives us cause for optimism and hope for the future. I've been working from home now since February of this year. That would have been inconceivable to me before. I used to do a lot of travel and would have spent a lot of time in the office and meeting partners and clients and team members, and I loved it. That was the story of my career for the last 20 years, and that's who I am, and that's what I've been. But actually, the last 8 months, it's been completely different, right? It's that's on its head now, and there are some really positive consequences there. I have 3 young kids, and I get to see them grow up. I get to spend more time with my family. I get to spend more time in my neighborhood, and I get more time to
think about ways of connecting with my family, and obviously we're confined and restricted and how much we can do outside of the household, in particular now in recent days here, and I'm sure in many other markets around the world. But it also teaches you about what's important in life, and it's back to those three big pillars, right? It's your relationships, it's your health, and it's your work, and it forces you to think much more clearly about protecting those three pillars. So that gives me a sense of optimism for the future. I think something else I do want to mention, which I know is a topic that's dear to your heart, is one of our core values at Indeed is around diversity and inclusion and belonging. And over the last 8 months or so, we've seen themes of race and gender and sexuality come to the fore in many ways, many disturbing and upsetting ways. I think what we've seen is convulsion happening in the US, not just in the US, outside the US globally. And it has led to some very uncomfortable situations for many people. But this is good, and this is real progress, and this is a positive thing because change is necessary. I think when I think of my own personal evolution, I have 3 daughters. One is black and 2 are white. So it really brings it home to me that there's more that I can do. Not just to protect, but more to prepare my daughters for the future and to ensure that I'm educating myself and that I'm helping to educate them. And I think that this convulsion that we've gone through over the last number of months has been a really positive thing for me personally, because it has forced me to challenge some conventions that I might have lived with previously in my life. These utopian ideals that things like skin color doesn't matter and we are all equal, which of course are factually correct in some ways, but they completely miss the point. And I think that there's an opportunity for us to really step up and become more aware and sensitive to these topics, to listen more to people who are experiencing firsthand this level of systemic prejudice, and it's an opportunity for us to learn and to get better at this. And I, for one, I'm going to get better at this every day. But I know it's a long journey, and it takes time and it takes effort. And I just hope that I'm doing enough. But I know that I can always get better. But the important thing is working with an organization that clearly has taken this into its heart and lives this every day. And I think it's something that's inspirational to me. And it shows me a clear path for how I can get better at this. So I'm appreciative of that.
Well, Conor, thank you so much for sharing that with all of us today. And thank you so much for everything you do for Indeed and for people all over the world, helping everyone get jobs.
Well, thank you, Chris, for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today. I really do appreciate it.